Everyone. So this is actually the project that I wanted to share with you today. It isn't as complicated as it looks. It actually is a lot of fun to do, doesn't take a really long time, and it's quite effective, even though it's so simple, because the story of Christmas is simple too. So we'll walk you through the steps and hopefully you can have some fun doing this at home. Okay, welcome to my tutorial. So a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. I have a plastic drop cloth that I use when I'm doing projects like this that I will put across whatever surface I'm working on just to protect it, because acrylic paint is kind of finicky. It's very plastic and it dries hard. And so if it gets on fabric or wood, it's really difficult to remove. So put down some plastic if you need to. Get yourself some paper towel, a yogurt tub or something with water in it. For your palette, you can just use anything plastic or even a pottery thing like a china dish or something like that, something that isn't porous, and you'll be able to use that to mix your paint. Got my little canvas here that came from the dollar store. Most of these are dollar store brushes. Instead of a toothbrush, I have this old brush that has a really stiff bristle head on it, which I'm going to be using for my spatter later on. And keep some paper towel handy to wipe out your brushes on. These are all my paints. They're not fancy paints. These are just cheap acrylic craft paint. Here's my little stencil that I'm going to use later on. But the first thing we're going to do today is actually do the background. So we're going to work on doing kind of variations in color of a night sky. And then once that's dry, we will actually speckle it with stars. And after the stars are on, we'll actually put our template on here and trace that and then fill that all in with black. Okay? Okay, so this is kind of the basis of what we're doing. We're trying to do like an ombre type finish. And so what you're doing is you're coming from dark down into your lighter colors. And looking at this now, I'm thinking that I want to warm it up a little bit. So I'm actually going to take some of my red and orange probably into this middle section through here and just put a little bit more light into the sky because it's really dark up here. And this is fine down here because the nativity silhouette is going to go over the top of this really, really light band in black. And so at this point, I'm just going to adjust it to where I want. When you're working with acrylic paint and you're blending, be really careful not to overwork it because it will muddy. It'll get kind of an indistinct kind of brown or gray color. And so you want to make sure that you use your brush fairly lightly and try and blend it really, really nicely. Okay, so I'm a little happier with that. It's going to need to dry before I actually start doing anything else with it. But at this point, you can kind of take a look and decide if you need more color in there. You're really wanting kind of a twilight sky where the sun is just falling below the horizon and you've got the real dark in the upper parts of the sky, but that's fading into the light at the base, okay? So it's going to take a little while to dry. You need to make sure it's fairly dry before you start your speckling. All right, so one of the things you can do to tell if you're dry enough to really start speckling is I've still got, see this gloss in here? This means I've still got wet paint. And so if I touch this surface, it's gonna smear. And I'm pretty happy with where it sits color-wise, so I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna make sure that it goes completely dull. If you take a look in the upper corners here, it starts getting kind of a matte finish to it, and that's what you want, because that means that the paint is set and it's ready to work over the top of. The other thing you'll notice I'm doing is that I have actually been wrapping the paint around the edges of the canvas. This means I don't have to frame it if I don't want to. You can just put it on a little stand or something like that. I've got to touch up this little chunk right here. And I did actually take a look at it again and decide I need just a little bit more red in here. So really, you probably could get away without the purple if you just wanted to do the red. So you really need a blue, a black, a red, an orange, and a yellow. And then you're just going to bring all those colors together. And then you'll get that glow happening in your skies. So I've adjusted the color quite a bit in here just because I wanted it to look a certain way. All right, so I've actually pulled my light up higher into the sky and made sure that my edges are all wrapped the way I want them to be. And now we're just at that waiting stage. We're going to do the speckles next. So when you do the speckles, you're going to take your toothbrush or your stiff brush, and it's going to be a flicking motion like this. And you're just going to use some white, okay? Just some ordinary white. So I'm just going to go grab my hairdryer and speed up the drying. So the other thing you need to check for at this point is if your light is far enough up. So you're going to have to take your silhouette and decide where it's going to sit on your canvas. And I think I want mine right about there, which means looking at that, seeing the light space behind it, I want to bring some of my light up behind where the silhouette will sit so that it looks a little bit, I don't know, just a little bit better. It'll bring up the light and you'll actually see that dark against it a lot better. So I need to actually pull my lighter colors, that yellow and the orange, up higher into my sky if I'm going to put the silhouette where it is in my hand right now. So one of the tricks you can use to get your yellow really glowing and make it look really light against your sky is that you can put a little tiny bit of white behind it and then take your yellow over the top. So I decided to do that here just so that I can push it up, okay? And we'll just blow dry it a little bit more. So now we're ready to do our stars in the sky. So you're going to take your white, put a little bit on your palette, whatever you're using. And you're going to get your brush wet just because you want this to actually splatter really well. And you're going to put a little bit of white in there and dab it out so that there's not a lot of paint in there. And then you're going to actually take it and flick it. It's hard to do with one hand and holding the phone. Okay, so if you see, you start to get these little white splatters in the sky that look a little bit like stars, all right? And this is actually where I'm going to pull my detail brush out too. So I've got a nice fine point brush that I can actually, you know, use to put some slightly bigger dots in a couple of spots, okay? And then I'm just going to, at random, dab a few slightly bigger ones just to make it look a little bit. There we go, that's probably good, okay? And I might just do a little tiny bit of some streaking in there, just a tiny bit. Okay, good. Okay, now we're ready to actually trace on our silhouette. And this is why you want your canvas completely dry, because you're going to actually position your little cutout where you want it to be on here. And I'm gonna put mine about there, like that. And then what I'm going to do is decide if I need any more light in here. I might actually put just a tiny little bit of light right in this section here above where baby Jesus would be, or the manger. And here's actually, she's holding the baby. And then once I've got the light the way I want it behind the silhouette, I'm actually going to take a Sharpie and trace my outline on here so I know where my black needs to sit in the painting. Okay, so I've got my tracing here now. I can see where I'm going to need to put my black in, all right? And so now I'm very carefully going to take my detail brush, which has the nice fine point on it that I can use, and I'm going to do the edge first and try and bring the black right up to the edge of that line. And then after I've got that in there nicely, I'll actually take a bigger brush, probably a thicker, maybe something about this big initially. Okay, so maybe about 1/4 of an inch, and I'll pull the black down. I'll put some more black on there and pull the black down, okay? All right, so I've got my black filled in now, where I've gone up to all my lines. Now at this point, I'm going to take a look and make sure I don't have any little bare patches or patches where the black is a little too thin. I want to make sure that it's all completely covered. And if you've made a mistake with your black, it's possible for you to go back in with some of your lighter colors that you used for the light behind and just touch it up a little bit. So for instance, right about here, I dropped a little dot of, so I can actually go back in there and just put some yellow in there or something, or some white. White will cover. And you can use your fingers a little bit too if you need to do some blending. But make sure you always carry the color around the edge, okay? And that's looking pretty good. I'm gonna let the black dry, and then I'm gonna decide if I wanna put a little bit of a sparkle coat on it. I actually have that's a sugar cube glitter. You can usually find a sparkle glitter or a clear glitter coat at any of the craft stores. That will work well. When your paint's dry, you just brush it over the top and let it dry, and it'll actually leave sparkles behind. So we'll do that, and then this will be done. All right, so I've actually used my glitter coat now and dried it really, really well. And so you can kind of see how it actually picks up the light. It doesn't have to be a matte finish. This stuff I happen to have, I bought cheap several years ago, and it actually dries matte. It's clear and matte, but there is a lot out there that's actually glossy, and that would look fine too. The other thing you could try is you could actually sprinkle glitter on the top half with just a clear varnish before it dries, and it will actually do well. But what I would do if you do that is actually put your silhouette back into position and then do it, so you don't end up getting all the glitter onto your silhouette in the front. But that's pretty much it. It's not a very long craft. It doesn't take very long to do, but it actually looks really cute. So happy painting.